You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. And welcome back after a few days off. I hope your time off was as restful as it could be, although I suspect not so much as it might have been in other years. We have a strong show for you today, though. My guests include a woman who is a feminist economist, and in case you were wondering why the economy worldwide is in such miserable shape, it's because that is one of the fields least hospitable to women, and we're going to discuss that. And my other guest is a woman from the Global South, a writer and a columnist and an activist who has a blistering and incredibly on-the-nose criticism of policies toward, in particular, women of the Global South that we're going to discuss. And there's Surrealism Corner and lots more, but first, you know where we have to go, inside the headlines. So many traumatic developments, so little time. The United Nations Security Council met in emergency session because North Korea fired an intercontinental ballistic missile in a test demonstrating its longest potential range capability so far, which can now reach all of the continental United States. But Trump was busy insult-tweeting Kim Jong-un, calling him a sick puppy, when actually to be called a dog is the worst possible offense you can make to a Korean. Trump was also busy retweeting a fanatic neo-fascist Brit who falsely claimed Muslims were committing atrocities against British citizens, and then he insulted Prime Minister Theresa May. And somehow he found time to make racist comments about indigenous people while supposedly honoring World War II veterans, the famous Navajo code talkers, at the White House. Who says he watches Fox News and plays golf all the time? He was also preoccupied claiming that his Access Hollywood tape was probably not his real voice, after having admitted it was him and having publicly apologized. Never one to be discouraged by pesky facts, including statements he himself publicly made, he also was busy reviving his personal birther conspiracy smear that President Obama was not a U.S. citizen, despite having publicly acknowledged that Obama was native-born. None of which has stopped Special Counsel Mueller from his investigations on the Russian front, and none of which has slowed the growing focus on Trump's own sexual assault accusers, who cried out during the campaign, but back then were basically ignored. No longer. Meanwhile, more big names continue to bite the dust, fired after credible accusations made of harassment or worse by gutsy women coming forward. Actors Dustin Hoffman, Steven Seagal, Jeffrey Tambor, and Jeremy Piven. Record mogul Russell Simmons. New Republic publisher Hamilton Fish. Journalists Mark Halperin of NBC, Charlie Rose of CBS and PBS. New York Times reporter Glenn Thrush. NPR News chief Michael Oreskes. And NBC's Today Show likable anchor Matt Lauer. Congress is contorted over Republican Congressman Joe Barton and Democrats Senator Al Franken and Congressman John Conyers. But given all the rumors that even I, an activist but a non-Washingtonian, have heard over the years, the centipede that is Congress has a lot more shoes to drop in both houses and on both sides of the aisle. More about this and the backlash and solutions in Fighting Words later on. But one more dust biter just got added to the list. More probably by the time you hear this. Garrison Keillor. His production company ties were severed by Minnesota Public Radio after allegations of inappropriate behavior. Keillor's radio show, A Prairie Home Companion, from which he's now retired, launched in 1974 and was a love song to a mythical town time forgot. This lovable, folksy storyteller, who was married 3 times, was in retrospect more revealing than perhaps he himself realized. In a 1994 speech at the National Press Club, he defended Bill Clinton during the Lewinsky scandal, saying, quote, A world in which there is no sexual harassment at all is a world in which there will not be any flirtation. Period. Close quote. In 1998, he wrote a novel about a radio host wrongly accused of sexual harassment and fired by his station. And recently, he penned a column for the Washington Post urging Al Franken not to resign. But unlike Franken, he neither admitted nor apologized for the alleged behavior, saying instead, quote, "I think the country is in the grip of a mania." Period. Close quote. So much for folksy and lovable. Meanwhile, as the avalanche rolls on, women and their male supporters have taken to the streets by the thousands in Spain to protest at what they are calling patriarchal justice during the trial of 5 men accused of gang raping an 18-year-old woman during Pamplona's bull running festival in 2016. The judge, who as of this moment has not yet rendered his verdict, has come under fire for allowing evidence of the victim's personal life and character to be admitted at the trial. That's not permissible in the United States due to feminist activism. But the judge did not, meanwhile, permit inclusion of texted conversations between the accused men, texts that were sent in a WhatsApp group called La Manada, or Wolf Pack, during which the men openly discussed their need to procure date rape drugs and ropes before going to Pamplona because, quote, "when we get there, we'll want to rape everything we set eyes on." Period. Close quote. No wonder Spanish feminists are in the streets. 2 perks of decent news in closing. The international one involves that plucky girls' robotics team from Afghanistan. Remember the ones denied a U.S. visa last July, but then after a global outcry they were allowed in to participate in a robotics competition? Well, they competed again and won the Robotex Festival in Estonia with a robot that can use solar energy to support small-scale farmers in their fields. What great kids. And back home, 538 reports that Chief Justice John Roberts has shifted somewhat to the left over his time on the highest bench in the land. In 2010, Roberts agreed with conservative Justice Samuel Alito 96% of the time. By 2015, he agreed with Alito in 84% of cases. But in 2015, Roberts shifted, and he agreed with Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg 78% of the time. The court can work mysterious changes as it dawns on justices, particularly chief justices, that their legacy really will live in history. It's time for a quick pause here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll return directly with my first guest, who is an economist and a feminist activist. And in case you've wondered why there aren't enough women economists and why that in turn doesn't shake down to, equal pay, stay tuned.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And welcome back. Heidi Hartmann is a feminist economist who's founder and president of the Washington-based Institute for Women's Policy Research, which is a research organization created to conduct women-centered public policy research. She's an expert on the intersection of women, economics, and public policy, and she's also a research professor at George Washington University and the editor of the Journal of Women, Politics, and Policy. Here is Heidi Hartmann. Heidi, welcome to the program.
I'm delighted to be with you.
I want to talk first about your baby, which is now a pillar of the women's movement, the Institute for Women's Policy Research that you founded and had, and just say a few words about that before we get into the situation of women economists.
I would love to tell you about the Institute. You know, when I first started it, I went to the mainstream foundations that I was used to working with when I worked at the National Academy of Sciences, and they all more or less said, "Oh, don't be ridiculous. We don't need a think tank on women's issues." And I said, "But there are research institutes at universities, that's true, but they're not engaging directly in the policy process, and we don't have something the equivalent of other think tanks like Brookings or Urban that's focusing on women, and I think we need that. And, you know, we're still small. We operate at about $3 million a year, and we have 20-plus staff. That's actually small for a think tank, although there are many smaller ones. But we've done very well. People acknowledge it was necessary. They come to us all the time for data and analysis and policy recommendations, and there's actually a rater of think tanks at the University of Pennsylvania, and we're in the top 100 of 1,800 U.S.-based think tanks, and on a couple of dimensions, top 100 in the world, like our outreach program and think tank to watch. So,
yeah, well, your contributions are way, way, way out of proportion to your funding and your size. My theory is they don't want to give money to women who are feminists to think. That's dangerous, you know.
That's absolutely true, even in the United States, unless you're connected to a university. But my friend Martha Burke, who well known from the Augusta National Golf Club and trying to get that integrated, which it finally did, she used to call those water carrying projects, and it keeps you carrying water. And there was once a list of 100 women donors and their favorite charities, and there were male-run think tanks on that list, like Economic Policy Institute, a perfectly good place. Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, another perfectly good place. But no women-oriented think tank on that list because women are supposed to act and serve. They're not supposed to think.
Yeah. Well, big wake up. We're thinking.
We are.
So one of the latest good things that the Institute for Women's Policy Research has given us is this astonishing petition. Astonishing because for two reasons: one, that it was necessary, but of course that shouldn't surprise us, and the other, that more than 1,000 economists have signed it. Talk about this petition urging the AEA, the American Economic Association, to address, you should excuse the word, misogyny in the field.
Yes, the American Economics Association is the economics professional association. It's the biggest one. It's the main one. And it's very mainstream. And you may know that economics is very narrow compared to other disciplines. It has a strong framework that we call neoclassical economics. It's difficult to get other ideas entertained there. And so what happens is that people start other organizations to get their ideas founded, get their ideas a hearing. So, for example, we have also the International Association for Feminist Economics, which a group of us started in order to make sure that there would be more discussion within the economics profession about feminist issues.
Yes.
But what this EJMR thing is called the Economics Job Market Rumors. It's a website, and everyone in the field seems to use it. Graduate students, people on the job market, department chairs that are recruiting, and they look to see what the competition is doing. And it doesn't tell you just what the openings are. AEA runs a very good job market with the openings. But this is telling you what happens after the job is announced. Who's being taken out for an interview? Who's been interviewed at the meetings? Who might have gotten an offer? Who's accepted an offer? So if you're a Wesleyan and you're going after Susie Smith, ideally a woman, and you see Harvard is competing for Susie Smith, well, then maybe that'll make you go after Susie Smith even harder. So people do use it. The problem is that when they use it, they will see all these, incredible negative comments about women, and mainly women, but also minority people, gay people. The biggest insult of men on the site, and you can look at the top 30 words that are on the site for both men and women. You know who the comments are being made about. You don't know who the commenters are because it's anonymous. But the top insults, the top insults for men are like gay, homosexual, and there are only 5 of them out of 30. The top 30 words for women are all insults, and they include hot and bitch, It's put out by a small group of people who don't identify themselves, who consider themselves doing a favor for the field.
Wow.
I think they also may do it for sociology and political science and other fields. And they say that, and they've tried to defend themselves, and they say, well, we've cleaned up the site and we've edited it. But they said that back in 2011. And this research was done in 2016 by, believe it or not, an undergraduate who was just graduating. It was her senior thesis at Berkeley, Alice Wu. She's now working at Princeton, and she'll be going to Harvard in the next fall, as a graduate student in economics. Thank God it didn't turn her off from pursuing the field.
Yes.
And she used, modern day computer techniques to track this website and all the comments and categorize them. And so she found this to be very disparate treatment of women and minorities. And it became known. I mean, obviously, everybody in the field who uses the job market, which I haven't done lately, knew about this, but it became publicly known when Justin Wolfers, who writes a column for the New York Times about economics, wrote about it this past August.
Yes.
And by October, the American Economics Association, which had nothing to do with creating the site, had not yet come out and condemned it or condemned the language on it.
Good grief.
And my colleague, Michael Reich, who's a professor at Berkeley, and we were just so outraged we couldn't stand it. And we finally came up with this petition idea. And, we thought it would be popular, but much to our surprise, we got over 1,000 signatures and 4 Nobel laureates in economics to sign it. And there hasn't ever been a petition that many economists have signed. We did open it to graduate students, but only those who plan to use the job market in the next year or two. Right. So these are people just beginning, just getting their PhD and going on the job market.
Well, is there no awareness in the AEA, that unless there are more women of economists and economists of color, et cetera, and more diversity in the field, that the field itself, the research itself, the theoretical research, et cetera, is harmed because it is so narrow and limited? I mean, your own work on women, Hilkka Pietila's work on women in economics in Finland, Marilyn Waring's work on economics and women. These are all major contributions that completely change the depth and breadth of economics, because they're including more than half the human species.
I know. It is amazing, and there's very little awareness of it. There are some women who champion it. One of our biggest champions is Janet Yellen.
Yes.
The Federal Reserve Board is the largest employer of economists in the United States. And she's held 2 conferences on how to get more women and minorities in the field, and about discrimination against women and minorities in general in the labor market. Right. But most of them haven't really accepted the gender revolution which has taken place in, let's say, literature, sociology, psychology. Economics is down there with physics and linguistics and political science, which is quite recalcitrant. And they do have 2 committees that are long-standing. One is on the status of women in the economics profession, and every year they report more or less dismal statistics about how many, graduate students we have, which is going up in terms of the number of women, but how few tenured professors we still have. Yeah. And actually now it's rather shocking because math majors in college are, just about 50% women. Yeah. But economics majors are only about 30 to 35% women.
Wow.
And it's always been assumed that it's the math that's holding the women back. It's not the math. It's more like engineering. It's got to do with the culture of the profession and perhaps how the subject matter is presented. I mean, they've discovered that in engineering, they're always coming up with male-oriented examples.
Yes.
Like, let's say, submarines. Right. And not things like that might appeal more to women, like how to produce a better health technology that would better screen for cancer instead of the painful mammograms we've all endured.
Yes. Precisely.
So this is the kind of thing. It's how it's presented, what the examples are.
Have they responded to this petition at all? Is the sleeping giant twitching?
It's twitching. It's barely stirring. Finally, October 20th, I believe it was, they issued a statement about the language being inappropriate. By then we had I know, it's hard not to laugh. By then, we had 500 or 600 signatures on our petition, and we believe that that's what motivated them. They appointed a committee, and they might have done that earlier. I'm not sure when they did that, but it's an ad hoc committee of 5 or 6 people about ethics in the profession. And, we've said explicitly we want them to create a competing website that would have this up-to-the-date job market information that everyone seems to want, and that should be run by the AEA. It should be moderated. It should not be anonymous. And people can put information on there, like department chairs and others, about what's really happening, so it doesn't have to be rumor-based. And so we won't get these, scurrilous comments. And they've not responded to that at all. They claim that this ad hoc commission is looking at that, but as a matter of fact, that commission's mission is the ethics in the field. So we really don't know. We believe it's going to come up at the annual meetings, which are in Philadelphia in early January. And I think there'll be a big turnout there, and there will be people demanding that they do put up a competing website. I mean, you might never get rid of EJMR, but you should get to the point where a woman in the field doesn't have to go to EJMR.
Exactly.
So that she doesn't have to see those comments.
Yeah, precisely. And that they're not the basis on which somebody is hired or not. I mean, that's absurd.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, faculty are seeing these comments, where it says lazy or cunt or whatever.
Oh my God.
And fat.
No.
Doesn't have an idea in her head. Stupidest person around. I mean, ridiculous.
And vicious, Well,
and vicious.
Well, my dear, good luck in January. I hope it turns the AEA on its head. I doubt that it will, but I think all attempts are necessary, and cumulative over time as well.
That's right. Well, thank you.
And thank you for everything that you've done in making this petition come to light, and also for the years of incredibly important contributions in research that your Institute for Women's Policy Research has done.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Robin, and I want to thank you for your lifetime of work on behalf of women. There's still a long way to go, but we sure have made a difference so far.
And now it's time for the Surrealism Corner. Here's a nice short item. Dana Nessel. She's the Democratic candidate for Michigan's Attorney General. She has a campaign ad focusing on sexual harassment. Next to her photograph, in large letters, the screen reads simply, "Who can you trust not to show you their penis?" That's probably the single most surreal political ad ever, unless you count those currently trying to defend the catastrophic Trump GOP tax bill as being great for the nation and for average Americans. Last month, a retired police lieutenant in Memphis, Tennessee, Cody Wilkerson, testified as part of a lawsuit against the city, saying that he overheard the head of investigative services in the city's police department say, quote, this was referring to rape investigations, quote, "The first thing we need to do is start locking up more victims for false reporting," close quote. Now that sounds surreal, but tragically, it's not. In 2015, an 18-year-old reporting rape in Linwood, Washington was disbelieved, and under police pressure, she finally recanted and was charged with false reporting punishable by up to a year in jail. The court ordered her to pay $500 in court costs and to go on supervised probation for a year. Over 2 years later, Colorado police arrested a serial rapist and discovered a picture proving he had raped her. In 1997, a legally blind woman reported being raped at knife point in Madison, Wisconsin. That same year, a pregnant 16-year-old reported being raped in New York City. In 2004, a 19-year-old reported sexual assault at gunpoint in Cranberry Township, Pennsylvania. In 2001, a 13-year-old in White Bear Lake, Minnesota, reported being abducted and molested. And in 2015, a physical therapist in Vallejo, California, reported being kidnapped and sexually assaulted. All were disbelieved, and all were later proven to be telling the truth. While some police departments now receive training about trauma and have changed their protocols, the guidelines for such reporting should be as simple as 3 words: believe the women. Here's a gallows humor item that sends me into fits of bitter laughter because it is so totally grim. It turns out that women are less likely than men to get CPR from a bystander and thus are more likely to die. That's from a new study funded by the Heart Association and the National Institutes of Health. Researchers think that reluctance to touch a woman's chest might be the reason. The study involved nearly 20,000 cases around the country, and it's the first to examine gender differences in receiving heart help from the public versus professional responders. Only 39% of women suffering cardiac arrest in a public place were given CPR versus 45% of men, and men were 23% more likely to survive. You can't make this kind of stuff up. Since CPR training is biased toward males in that the practice mannequins are usually done on male torsos, the researchers posit that maybe the training might need to be improved. You think? I do like to end my commentaries on a positive, or at least a fight-back note. So there's this. The first true bid for the assets of the virtually destroyed Weinstein Company is from a woman, Maria Contreras Sweet, a Mexican immigrant who served as head of the U.S. Small Business Administration under Obama, who has built banks and businesses and has 4 bona fide backers ready to put up $275 million in funds that are ready and won't have to be raised. This tops previous bids, and even Gloria Allred, the attorney for many of the women who accused Weinstein, has given this bid her blessing. Here are some moving excerpts from Maria Contreras Sweet's offer letter to the Weinstein Company Board of Directors. Quote, "As a longtime business leader and advocate for gender and racial equality, I have been profoundly affected by the recent revelations surrounding this company's leadership. You must care, as I do, about the women who have suffered the indignities inflicted upon them. I feel compelled to take action to provide them with some remedy for what they have endured. I believe we have now reached a crossroads where it is imperative that a woman-led board acquire control of the company and create content that continues to inspire audiences around the world, especially our young girls and boys." Period, close quote. Now, that goes beyond surrealism into the realm of real poetic justice. Time for another quick break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll be back with my next guest, who is a Pakistani writer and columnist who has written a devastatingly accurate critique of global North attitudes toward, in particular, global South women. So don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again. My next guest, Rafia Zakaria, is an attorney, a human rights activist, and the author of The Upstairs Wife, An Intimate History of Pakistan, which was published by Beacon in 2015, and which was named one of Newsweek's top 10 nonfiction books of that year. Her work has appeared widely in The Guardian and New York Times Book Review and New Republic and New York Times. And she is a columnist for the Pakistani newspaper Dawn. Here, to my great pleasure, may I present Rafia Zakaria. Rafia, welcome to the program. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much, Robin.
Well, I have become this huge fan of yours because of an op-ed piece that I read of yours in the New York Times called "You Can't Empower Us with Chickens." You write, development organizations' programs must be evaluated on the basis of whether they enable women to increase their potential for political mobilization such that they can create sustainable global equality. Hallelujah. Instead of 12 hand looms for a village in the global south, you're talking about women defining and gaining power.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for reading the piece. It is, the piece is something that came out of the larger report that me and my co-authors, Mimi Gower-Nathan and Kate Cronin-Furman, did called Emissaries of Empowerment. Uh-huh. It came out of, this very central frustration that all three of us had felt in different contexts in which there seemed to be this kind of competition on who comes up with the magic solution that's going to suddenly empower women in the global south. And so, we took the chickens and sewing machines example because they are actual examples. I mean, this is something that the Gates Foundation, for instance, was devoting hundreds of millions of dollars to, this idea that you can give women chickens. And of course, the central core of the problem there is that the women who are receiving these chickens are reduced to kind of these flat, one-dimensional creatures. So, you never, for instance, think, I'm going to give the women of Detroit, a carton of eggs every week, and they'll never have problems with nutrition. The point being is that they become these one-dimensional creatures that don't have any complexity, and are just kind of sitting there.
Or desires of their own for what would empower them.
Oh, absolutely. Even in cases where they do have overt political identities, in the case of the Tamil women, for instance, that we document in the report, they're actually told to kind of put away those identities. Otherwise, they cannot, be part of these sorts of programs. So it's not even that development initiatives that are supposedly selling empowerment or, enabling empowerment are not, they're not encouraging political mobilization. It's that even in cases where a political identity is already present, they're actually, explicitly demanding its suppression.
Right. Well, there seems to be two themes to it to me for years. I mean, when the Sisterhood is Global Institute, was founded, by women from 80 countries, when the anthology came out, in 1984, believe it or not, so 35 years ago, we tried to get funding to bring 25 of the contributors, all from the global south, almost all from the global south, together for the first feminist think tank. Okay? We finally did piece together the funding, but it was just hell on earth because everybody wanted to give funding for those hand looms in some village in India. But nobody wanted to give money for women to come together and think. And I thought, that scares them. That scares the hell out of them. Also, all of the things they wanted to give money to were very traditional roles for women, training them in hairdressing, things like that, cake making, not in the things they wanted to learn.
Well, yeah, and unfortunately, not a lot has changed because while there are a lot of international convenings, they've become part of kind of this celebrity culture of conferences where, you have stars or you have people who have a very high profile come, and then, there is this kind of tokenism in which women of the global south are invited, but they are reduced to, the war widow or the rape victim or the child soldier.
That's right.
And that, right. And that, again, is another kind of flattening. It's another kind of dehumanization.
And it also doesn't threaten the political system. It doesn't threaten, it leaves all the power folks, mostly pale males, right in place. It's maddening.
Right, precisely. And, the core issue is the fact that, when the term even empowerment was coined, its central meaning in that initial phase was to mobilize women and to end gender subordination.
Right.
But the end gender subordination part, they keep that, but the political mobilization part has been completely lost. And one of the issues that we talk about, and which I think is central to this problem, is the issue of power. And it's not just the power between, male elites in these societies or even in the West and women, but it's also the power differential that exists between, women who are doing aid work and development work, this sort of kind of bureaucratic aid delivery class that has emerged, the women who are receiving the help.
It's a whole industry now, just like
exactly, and that's exactly what we think is the problem, because the fact is that if all the money, and the central idea is that if you help women, if you take politics out, then the central equation is that you get a kind of high coming out of this altruistic, oh my God, I sent a chicken and this is going to empower a woman. And, and so that high kind of becomes the object, because these organizations want donors to give money, and donors want to give money then and believe that they empower these women. And so there's this feedback loop that exists between the donors who are giving the money and the organizations who are collecting it. And guess who's left out of that equation?
The women on the ground, every time, the women on the ground,
Exactly.
Yeah, but
exactly.
Supposedly this was not about making the donors feel good. It's, wasn't an emotional spa for them. Supposedly this wasn't.
I'm going to use that word.
Oh,
I'm definitely using emotional spa somewhere.
You're welcome to it. It wasn't supposed to be about that. It wasn't even supposed to be about, quote unquote, helping in a Lady Bountiful global North way those poor victimized women from the global South. It was supposedly about finding and strengthening the bonds of oppressions and figuring out together, each woman and group of women, best the experts on her region, her locale, how to do that, end that oppression, and basically change the whole definition of power from power over to power to. That's a very different agenda from making somebody feel good because they sent a woman a chicken. How would they like to receive a chicken in the mail?
Yes, what the point that you're making is absolutely a crucial one, and that is, there's a kind of radical politics that's required to engage in this kind of sisterhood. It requires changing the political discourse, not just in the context in which these women are operating, but in the context at home. And, I talk a lot about how the feminist movement has in some ways failed to do that by sort of becoming very insular and very kind of taken with issues of celebrity or, I'm not saying that the celebrities can't do anything good.
Right, no,
but the fact is that we have to vote differently. We have to think about war differently. We have to, take on issues. The one thing that just absolutely devastates me every time is the fact that the Western feminist movement did not have a good response to the hijacking of feminism in Afghanistan, where it was used to, kind of sell this war and all the rest of it.
Well, some of us did, but we were drowned out by the crowds of
right. But that's what I mean is that the ground shell, because nobody, the idea that you need a radical politics that opposes different things based on a feminist position is still lost. And ultimately, that is why politics has been kind of bleached out of, bleached out of development, is because that's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to have conversations across disagreement. It's hard to say that I have to change how I operate at home and in my life, and the ways what I use and what I consume and what I believe, because I'm engaged in kind of this global sisterhood.
That's right.
Right. And so, empowerment made easy, or empowerment export made easy, preaches that, oh, well, you don't have to worry about your politics at all. Just write this check, or, just invite this woman to your conference and have her talk about how horrible her culture is. And,
yes.
And I mean, that point is also crucial, is that, if you are not at home engaged in a critical assessment of your own culture, then this idea that we have to save them from their culture
right.
becomes a very sort of problematic proposition. The premise is constantly that we have to save these women from their culture,
and really,
rather than help them transform it.
That's right. And all that is warmed over, leftover missionary zeal. I mean, that has nothing. That's what in the 19th century and 20th were called missionaries. That's a version of that, and it is so disrespectful. It's a sort of the corporatization. An attempt to corporatize the women's movement, and when anything becomes donor driven, that's not a good sign. So it needs voices like yours.
We've gotten a lot of pushback on this article, and and some of we've also gotten a lot of support, but we've gotten a lot of pushback, particularly because we are bringing up issues of race and how this kind of white missionary imperialist agenda is still so ingrained into development frameworks that unless we have correctives, I sincerely believe actually that many people who are working in development today don't recognize that
that's right. They don't get it.
Right. But the recipients do. And so, you have this system where the delivery is almost, gone back exactly to these colonial missionary models. And the recipients see it, and they don't like it, but there isn't any kind of way that their views can even be understood, or that time can be taken, because all you have to do is get a spreadsheet together and put the deliverables and say how many chickens or how many sewing machines that you delivered. And if you do that, you've done your job in saving the world. And so what anybody feels about it, or what the historical frame is in which your work is being interpreted and understood, is sort of completely, it's like, they've taken an eraser, or they've taken some Clorox and they just bleached all of that out.
That's right. And it always boils down to the same thing. Listen to the women. So if it weren't for women like you, and thank God you're a columnist for a Pakistani newspaper, so you have a forum and a voice, please keep on doing the work that you're doing. It is so needed. It's so needed, and it's needed by women of the global north to hear it as well. Thank you, Rafia, for being with us, and I hope you'll come back and talk to us again.
I will, absolutely. This has been an honor. Thank you so much, Robin.
It's time for one last quick break here at Women's Media Center Live, and then I'll be right back with, fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Back again with some fighting words. In the frigid winter of 1905, Many of the women who exquisitely hand-painted the world-famous Limoges vases and figurines went on strike in France, not over low wages or long hours, but because they were tired of being prey to the factory overseers' sexual demands. Their protest was against the custom dating back to the Middle Ages in which feudal lords, later on bosses, demanded sexual services from the women who worked for them. The Limoges porcelain workers won their fight only after the strikes turned violent and the army opened fire, killing one male supporter and wounding 4 others. The news reports described a funeral procession of 30,000 workers, almost all women, carrying flowers as a last homage to someone who had died fighting for their dignity. So all this is hardly new, and hardly restricted to any one particular walk of life in a patriarchy. Just since I began this segment, news broke that over 200 women in national security, military, diplomatic, and development positions sent an open letter published by Time magazine saying they are survivors of sexual harassment, assault, and abuse, or know others who are. Hopefully the truth will continue to out, but not if an incipient backlash has its way. I was braced for it, and sure enough, male and a few female pundits are already whining about a so-called overreaction, about women becoming vengeful furies, about rushing to judgment, this after 5, 6, or more victims come forward on the record, and about the career devastation faced by these perpetrators who are, after all, fill in the blank, good men, allies, even icons of the right or of the left, depending on who is wringing whose hands. Besides, the worriers pout. What do women want us to do about this? How do women want men to behave? Is this or that now acceptable? What's okay? These same people would not ask a man whose watch was stolen what reforming advice he would give to the thief, but it's fine to throw yet another job back on women. Well, I'm tempted to say all we want is to be believed and for men to act like decent human beings, but apparently such simple counsel is mystifying beyond cognition. So let's sort this mess out in pursuit of some clarity. And let's start by being brutally honest about what does not work. Experience teaches us that the billion-dollar industry of sexual harassment training and sensitivity awareness programs in corporations and businesses is a laugh. It's there to protect the institution, not the employee. In fact, these trainings originated after the EEOC, that's the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's 1980 guidelines first stated that employers could be held liable for harassment. As for human resources grievance procedures, experience teaches us that they deliver a slap on the wrist, if any, to the perpetrator, while the complainant becomes a quietly marked woman who soon is either dismissed, for other reasons, of course, or who feels driven out and leaves. Experience also teaches us that so-called therapies and inner journeys that all these guys are embarking on, well, they're also nonsense. As Vale Wright, Director of Research and Special Projects at the American Psychological Association, puts it, quote, "There are no evidence-based programs known of for the sort of men who have been in the news recently." Close quote. That includes 12-step programs, group counseling, impulse control techniques, life coaches, hypnotherapists, and residential addiction clinics with names like Cheerful Birdsong Meadows. Furthermore, the evidence is weak for empathy training in so-called sex addict offenders. Such techniques as role-playing or attending court hearings where survivors testify graphically to their anguish. Dr. Michael Cito, Director of Rehab Research at the Royal Ottawa Healthcare Group, notes that it's hard to teach empathy, but, quote, accepting responsibility is often done confrontationally instead of collaboratively. Close quote. James Cantor, director of the Toronto Sexuality Centre, concurs, quote, confrontation itself, being busted or outed as so many are now publicly, is enough to curtail or end the behavior in many cases, close quote, particularly when the offender has a lot to lose in terms of money and standing. That's all the more reason for doing away with enforced secrecy, those required arbitration clauses in employment contracts, and those damnable non-disclosure agreements. Even when a woman makes a settlement in the most principled manner, it backfires. Zelda Perkins, a former assistant to Harvey Weinstein, was one of the women involved in the sexual harassment and assault settlement that was underwritten by Harvey's brother Bob 20 years ago. Even then, Perkins recognized that Harvey Weinstein had a serial pattern of behavior. She fought for and obtained requirements specifically intended to prevent him from continuing to victimize women, so the settlement mandated that he receive treatment from a psychiatrist of Perkins' choice, and that Disney, which owned the company, be notified of all future harassment settlements made by him. Nonetheless, Harvey's actions continued in secret for decades. The system protected and enabled him. Money, power, and the underlying unacknowledged conviction that women are somehow less than fully human. Then there are the politicians. Congresswoman Jackie Speer disclosed that the House of Representatives had paid more than $17 million to settle 260 claims of harassment over the past 20 years, which came out of taxpayer money assigned to congressional reps for expenses. Spears is working with a bipartisan group of politicians to introduce federal legislation that would overhaul the way Congress handles harassment claims, including offering better legal counsel to employees with allegations and removing a long-standing requirement that they sign non-disclosure agreements. Good, but I must say that such a moderate approach, however practical, is disappointing. Personally, I would start back at that $17 million and insist retroactively that the perpetrators repay the Treasury out of their own pockets, with the funds explicitly marked for the budget of the EEOC and or for programs of particular value to female citizens. As for differentiating degrees of offense, yes, that's a bit complicated, but hardly impossible. The punishment should fit the offense. Sexual abuse of minors, as in the case of would-be Senator Roy Moore in Alabama, is flatly in a category by itself. It's a devastating crime in both law and morality and should be strictly punishable as such. Similarly, sexual assault of an adult is a crime, punishable, and requiring resignation or removal from the position held by the perpetrator. The supposed gray areas of mandatory flirtation, unwelcome touching, uninvited speech, leers and communications, and the like are not so gray when you consider that they create chronic fear of losing one's job, sleepless nights, nausea, revulsion, perpetual anxiety, depression, and other side effects of what is really forcible conditioning to an intolerable situation. But gradations of punishment, ranging from demotion or censure through compensatory financial payment and public in-person apology and more, are all possibilities. I do think that a one-time event, unless it's an assault, needs to be examined scrupulously and possibly might not result in a firing. But I know all too well that most harassers and assaulters are repeaters. So, although I like Al Franken's politics, and although he seems to be the one politician who has so far thoroughly and seriously apologized, now that 5 women have come forward, I think he should resign. And I am furious at him for putting me and us, and Minnesota, in a position where I have to think that. I also think that Representative Conyers, despite his long distinguished service to both civil rights and this country in general, should resign. To put progressive politics, whether of racial equality or economic justice or any other aspect of forward thinking, before women, before half the human species, sends what message? It sends the message that women are just less important, that women are less than fully human. All those liberal human concerns over there, and then women over here. It sends the message that women are still, and always will be, sexual prey. So I want to see the secret list of all the congressional settlement payouts, by whom and to whom made with my money over the years, and if any of those perpetrators are still serving, they must resign. If Roy Moore is elected and the Senate constitutionally has to seat him, then they must immediately expel him. Franken, alas, should go. Conyers, alas, should go. The business world and the media world reacted forcefully and swiftly because, frankly, they were scared of losing money in audiences or in advertisers who, in turn, were scared of losing consumers. Not until there's a price to pay by politicians, too, will there be change. And I have another thought, probably too good to ever be adopted, that would decisively work. Every man forced to resign his post due to these behaviors, whether in business, academia, politics, or anywhere else, should, as a matter of course, be replaced by a woman qualified for the job. In politics, this would mean a special election with only female candidates running. In other jobs and professions, it would mean facilitated entry for all those qualified women the boys always claim they've been looking for and they would hire if only they could find them. I leave it to the many qualified female legal minds to work out the details on how this could be mandated, but surely affirmative action is one model. This much I do know. 1. Society has been deprived of the full talents, vision, and drive of half its citizens. 2. Evidence shows that perpetrators respond best to confrontation and to corrective loss. And 3. Ultimately, the situation will not change until many more women are in equal positions of real power across the board. So this replace him with a woman strategy would solve a whole lot of problems in one fell swoop. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag #FightingWords. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMCLive.com for the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes, and at iTunes, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. And you can check out my website and blog at robinmorgan.net and find me on Facebook and Twitter, too. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton, and our founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us, and don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.